another pause, and then we'll get into the topic. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. So, all right.
This is the Outpost RBA podcast, where we
Hello,
lead
and
security
welcome
teams
to
to
another
higher
episode
ground
of
and
the
new
Outpost
perspectives
RBA
needed to
podcast.
secure the frontiers
I
of
am your host,
enterprise.
Will
With
Robus,
hosts
and
Will
with
Robus
me here,
and Stuart
as always,
McIntosh.
Co-host Stuart McIntosh. Stuart, how are you? Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Outpost RBA podcast. I am your host, Will Robus, and with me here, as always, is my co-host, Stuart McIntosh. Stuart, how are you doing today?
Good. Still here. Always next to your side.
Yeah, I want to come up with a better cold intro question, because how you doing is a little overplayed. We'll have to add that to our creative session next time.
Any new favorite card games? No. Oh, okay.
That sounds super boring. Actually, today we are going to get a little bit out of the box, and we are going to talk about gratefulness and gratitude and things that we appreciate as part of Outpost operating as a company, practicing in the cybersecurity space, and all the things that we don't get to talk about when we are focused on solving these vexing problems on a day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year basis. And of course, when you hear about cybersecurity in the news, it's always about a breach and a ransom
or an acquisition.
Or an acquisition, yes.
But it's never at the end of the news broadcast to make you smile. You know, the one where someone rescued a puppy, or no. It's usually not our space that does that.
Correct. All right. Well, before we jump in the topic of today, let's go over a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. As always, we like to highlight the RBA community. It is our online and offline gathering place for defensive security practitioners, folks interested in risk-based alerting, Splunk enterprise security, threat detection, and incident response. All the operational topics we talk about routinely on this podcast. We'd like to highlight the monthly event that group puts on. We call it Office Hours. It's kind of a mix of practitioner presentations, pointing to resources, as well as some time for questions and answers, or just to kind of like problem solve in real time. And those are again about monthly. Check out the RBA community website for I think we've got them scheduled through the end of the quarter, but we usually get them scheduled about 3 to 6 months in advance. So you can kind of count on those. So again, that's at rba.community. Second thing we wanted to highlight is the Outpost readiness review that we've been offering to customers probably for the last 6 months now. And that is a free, essentially walkthrough review of your Splunk enterprise security data, as well as your existing threat detections. Our goal is to kind of put it through the lens of, all right, if you are on the RBA path or interested in implementing RBA, here are some kind of key components that you need to focus on in order to put yourself in a good position for that and start rolling out RBA. But it really gets into kind of your core Splunk configurations, how your data is flowing, data models, even some performance stuff. We've done a couple in the last few weeks, Stuart. Any kind of observations from, I don't know, doing this now several times?
Yeah. There's always something that the team learns, which is always great for me. Like I feel like sometimes I just repeat myself, but there's always something new to learn from it. So it very much is kind of knowledge sharing. It's not so clinical. I think sometimes people think it'll be clinical like other vendor health checks, and it's not. It's really just a group of people stepping through key components of their not only their platform but how they operate in security. And I think kind of that fusion of the technical and the process and the team makes them really unique. And I always enjoy them. I always enjoy them quite a bit.
That's a great point. They're technical in nature, but we spend a lot of time talking with the teams about, all right, where are you at? Where are you trying to get to? What are your concerns? Each team always has some strong points that they've implemented or executing, but then they also have areas of like, hey, we wish we could do this better. So it's really an alignment exercise, and again, I don't think you can make it any more efficient than it is, because it's 2 hours and it's your environment and your data, and it's almost it's a very bespoke, hey, what's going on and where would we suggest you go next?
And what I love is it's even to the level of, listen, you've done the work with data models, but I still don't trust them. Okay, let's bring that up. Like, it may not be a technical barrier, but there's some reason you're not trusting them. Let's talk about it. Let's explore it. It's kind of it's kind of like nothing sacred as far as like, you can't say that, or let's not do, like, let's have a real conversation so that we can get you headed in the right direction that you want to.
Yeah. And that's another great point. It's really our jumping off point, because we talk about on this podcast almost every episode, it's the people and process that is as critical as the technology. So it's our way to try to begin to align that across different security teams.
I did one, and the manager of the SOC actually said, I really appreciate that you're bringing up questions that affect my team. Like, how do we investigate an alert? How do we make it easier for analysts? And I think just even the fact that we're trying to bring it from all the different roles really helps as well. Helps brings the teams together. So sign up. Absolutely sign up.
Yes, please go to our website. We have plenty of opportunities to click a button and schedule your readiness review. All right, so let's get into the topic of today, and that is gratitude. Stuart, this was your kind of impetus, this topic today. So maybe give us a little background or context as to why you brought this up and why we wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, this every once in a while I get a bee in my bonnet about like shaking out of maybe mental loops that I've been in. And especially with some of the podcasts, I think when you and I record these, there's enough distance between them that we don't realize maybe we're on a loop or on a topic. So because there's distance, there's other experiences. But for someone who's listening, it's like, hey, like, there's always problems that you bring up. And it's like, yeah, there are. Like, we're not short of things that could be improved. And some of those things are things that are on fire. Totally get it. But what I wanted to do was step back and just say, why do I personally stay in the fight? Like, why am I, even with 20 plus years of doing this, why do I still show up for customers, for the work that we do, doing the podcast, doing the community stuff? And it's because there are things that I'm extremely grateful for in this space. And I just thought it'd be neat to spend a little time covering, at least for you and I, what are these unique aspects that help kind of that grind, like, stay in there, help add to that grit, because there is valuable things. And I know we're not going to cover all of them, but just even getting the ball rolling of thinking about, okay, there are things to look forward to, where there are things that fill the cup back up a little bit. And I thought it'd be unique with you coming, like, you've been adjacent to security for quite a while through different prior jobs, but now you're in it. Like, now you are in the pit with the rest of us. So I thought it'd be great to kind of get maybe your take on some of this as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a cool perspective that we have between the two of us. You've been essentially in IT administration and cybersecurity your entire career. I've been in technology across a spectrum. So not only IT, but kind of engineering technologies from
Right.
and
Technical teams.
yeah, and a lot of them were kind of sort of mechanical instrumentation engineering when I was at the university, first part of my career. And then I got exposed to a lot of like science and life science kind of technologies through some of my other startup ventures. And it wasn't until we started Outpost that I was exposed to cybersecurity. But I mean, at the time, I was looking for an opportunity, and I evaluated different industries. I've had a lot of experience in different industries, different companies, and startups, larger organizations, everything. And I mean, I ostensibly chose cybersecurity, and I don't know if I knew what I was getting into when I picked it 4 years ago, but
the brochure had a bunch of stuff missing, didn't it?
Yeah, so it was a conscious and deliberate choice that I made, and I've been evaluating that, obviously, to make sure I made the right decision. But I think I did, and that's what I think I want to talk about when we go over this topic. But so yeah, so gratitude in the industry / trenches of cybersecurity. So you've got a couple of highlights, and so maybe introduce the first one, and we'll unpack it a little bit.
Yeah. So the first one, and I hope people can relate to this, and maybe not, because I can't. Like, this has always been my world, has been cybersecurity. So from the outside, what I wanted to highlight was the fact that we have in our industry conventional and what I would call non-conventional gatherings, and trainings and conferences. And so what do I mean by that? Well, we have big national ones, right? We have Gartner, we have Black Hat, we have RSA out in San Francisco, if they choose to have it out there again. But so we have these big ones, right? And everyone kind of knows about them, especially if you're in leadership. Sometimes there's pressure to go to the big ones. But then what's been really amazing is it used to be really underground tribal groups of people that knew each other. And that's how information spread locally or more regionally. But now there's been like this kind of blossoming effect. And I really saw it after DerbyCon. After DerbyCon ended, there was about a year to 2 years where it was really kind of quiet. And then all of a sudden, all these like local security chapters started popping up. There's the DC series. So we have one here called DC 608. And then all these B-sides type groups started popping up as well. And so what really made me excited about that is I've been to the big conferences. I know what it's like to be at DEF CON when there's 12 to 15,000 people. But I've also been to some of these B-sides, and to be honest, I enjoy these local ones because you really get to connect to people. The other thing I like about this is, depending on your level of social interaction, there's lots of opportunities at all of these to interact in a way that you enjoy. So if you want like kind of a quiet corner to go talk to someone, there's some of that. If you want like loud music to hang out and have experiences, there's some of that. And it just, it struck me as something that I don't think we give enough credit, especially to all these kind of local um, conference and group leaders, because they're really, I mean, this is in addition to making money to eat. Like this is, no one's really, especially these local chapters, no one's becoming a multimillionaire because they ran a local security chapter. They do it because they're passionate. They do it because they want to give people a chance to hang out and connect. Um, and I really like that. And I don't think we talk about it enough about how great, like a lot of places say community, but we've been lucky enough to experience what people mean by that word. And I think that's great for this space and that it's encouraged and that there's support for stuff like this. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Especially being a noob and being exposed to some of these for the first time. And I think there's kind of two threads to pull on with what you just said. Number one is there's a there's a cultural component to all of these groups and these conferences, and it's eclectic, but it's also personal. So like it's I mean, the best example of this I think is so my first conference was DerbyCon, and it was the final DerbyCon, um and which is pretty, it's probably the biggest sort of local flavor kind of a conference, um compared to the big national ones and compared to kind of the smaller, like the B-sides community ones. So and there was, you know, this this unique culture that we have in cybersecurity, but the cool part was there were so many like little subcultures. I mean, there was the electronic hat people, and just that was the one that stood out to me the most, right? There was just,
The chess people. They're sitting down in the lobby and they literally play chess 24 hours a day.
yeah, but
And it's a group that just rotates. That's
right.
their jam.
Or
That's their jam.
and then all the off-grid hobbyists, right? Like, so it's
Yep.
so and to me that was very, very open and accepting and interesting, because everybody kind of had their own little thing, but there also was at least a couple other people that sort of had that thing or one of those things. So um
I was shocked at some of my first kind of, especially DerbyCon, because it's like a large family gathering. It really is. And especially if you went year after year, you literally saw people from the prior years and you would just pick up where you left off. But what really struck me was I'm used to, like, I worked in a corporate environment. I'm used to polos and khakis. Like that was me. But at DerbyCon, there was literally who you are in the daytime and who you are at the nighttime. Like there's not even pressure to keep the persona or the gift wrapping the same for a day. And then at night you would see these costumes, or the onesie patrol would come out, or like, and it was just people who, like, that was just, it made them happy. So they did it. And as long as it didn't hurt people, people were down with it. Like it was crazy to see just how open everyone was. There was like, you know, so you may feel a little off, but on the other hand, you might actually open up a little bit more. Like it did a lot to break the shell or armor that you might have up. Cause it's like, well, what I'm wearing is not any weirder than that outfit over there. Like, you know, like if you think you're going to stand out, odds are you won't. Odds are you won't.
and then the second kind of the second thread I wanted to highlight is these what what I noticed right away and I thought was really interesting is all the smaller groups, right? I mean, like the B-sides is a perfect example. So how sort of unconference / like local they were. I mean, smaller venues. I mean, like the early B-sides that you would tell me about were like, yeah, we just, booked a bar for a Saturday and just gave a bunch of talks, and it was, hung out and drank beer and what have you. But I mean, the fact that that's been, kind of nationally pervasive, and encourage that, hey, it's a brand. We are focused on the industry, but pretty much they're all independently organized and funded and everything like that. So I thought that was a very, it was a cool way to like to scale, but not like maintain sort of like some kind of control from a overarching hierarchy standpoint. And all the ones that I've been to have been very open and accessible with like, at least a handful of talks focused at maybe some early, people that have been in industry for a year or two, talking about how they got there. Training is always a huge component. So we, last week we did a B-sides in St. Petersburg, which was in its second year. And we did a training session, which was the Splunk bots that we ran. And we had, I don't know, 15 people. So a nice small group, 4 or 5 teams, a lot of new people, and they were tenacious.
Maybe like, 3 or 4 had experience with Splunk, none really from a security perspective.
Yeah, and they were all there to learn and just kind of, get their hands dirty and dig through kind of this defensive capture of the flag scenarios. But I mean, it was amazing. Like that, 4 hours they were hammering on these questions, and I think a few people, like people barely took breaks. Like,
yeah.
So that was, and it was our first time. We had played bots several times, and I had played bots, and I love it as an experience from an exposure and a learning standpoint. But that was the first one that we facilitated, and I mean, I couldn't have been happier with the result, because it was super engaging. And again, like, it was a lot of people who were there just to learn and be exposed, and a couple of people who we had conversations with, they were like kind of maybe in IT or an adjacent industry, but like they were absolutely interested in pursuing kind of a career in cyber specifically. And I felt like our exercise helped shape that path, as well as a lot of other parts of the conference. And in fact, I think, Wilson Batista is kind of one of the lead organizers there, and that's his goal, is to get exposure and to get people kind of coming into the industry and making it accessible. So that being a goal of even these local conferences, I think is really, really cool.
And here, I know this is about gratitude, but like, honestly, if you're a security team for even an average size company, go out and find these local ones, because I'm telling you, there is raw talent floating around who don't know how to just get tapped in. And so, like, absolutely, like, there's people that care and want to help. Like, there's no reason to struggle finding a hire if you have not looked at some of these local security startups, the B-sides, the DCs, because there are people that spend their nights and weekends trying to get better to break into this industry. And the best way to find them when they're doing it on their own hour, on their own dime. Like that, nothing shows you passion and self-starting like that. So, and that kind of brings me, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's a perfect lead into,
well, because we met someone during the training who wanted to get into security and was doing conventional help desk, service desk type work, and said, it just seems like a long road from IT, service desk, help desk to security, even as a SOC analyst. And yeah, it's an unfortunate bar that our entry level job in security, by the way, you have to protect the company from all threats known and unknown. Like that is a terrible entry job. Like, it just is. But for some reason, that's what we've all kind of signed off on and saying, oh yeah, that's where we're going to put people new to security. But what's great is I've seen some of our advice to them, and like, personally, I had someone who came to me who wanted to get into security. They weren't even on a help desk. They were a customer service rep, and specifically, they handled people trying to terminate their service. So they're angry, they feel overcharged, they hate your service. He literally, his job, 8 to 9 hours a day, was to pick up the phone and convince them to stay. Like, that was his job. And he was measured by how well he could convert people leaving them. Like, that was his metric, was, well, you better get 10% of them to agree to stay. And it was like, how tough of a job is that? Like, you just vile comments, just like, you people are stupid, this is a Ponzi scheme, like, just all of it. And so he came to me and he said, hey, I want to get into security, what can I do? And I said, just explain to me about your job. Yeah, guess what? He's going to make a great security analyst, an amazing one, because he understands pressure, he understands outrage, he can manage that stress level and still do a job, still follow things, do a job, get because he was allowed to be creative in that role too. Like, you could do some discounting, you could add an extra service, you could, like, he had some flexibility to be creative to solve that problem. And to be honest, we ended up taking a chance on him and hiring him as an analyst. And to this day, he's never left the industry. He's now a manager at another security company. Like, he's killing it. But it's only because we saw things other than security work. We saw elements to his experience and his character that would make him good for these roles. And that's kind of what we told the person who was in the service desk, which is, it continues to be an amazing space for people to pivot into. You don't have to go to college to break into this space. In fact, we see some mid-career people that they're mid-30s, 40s, whatever, who say, you know what, I want to try to get into security. And the fact that that's still possible, I hope we never lose that as an industry. I hope we never become so self-grandizing that we say it has to be a lifelong career. I hope we always allow that pivoting, because some of the most interesting thoughts are from people that have a wealth of other experience who are now looking at our problems because they can relate it to things. And I hope we don't lose that, but it's something I'm extremely grateful for. I was an early transition, like 18 years ago. I was a part of a desktop team and then transferred into security. So it was kind of one of those, as we built security, we just grabbed people. Some people were doing network admin or sysadmin work, and we all kind of got grabbed. But since then, I've watched people with non-technical backgrounds, delivery people, customer service reps, animators, like the list is long of people who have had other successful careers and transitioned into security. And I hope that continues.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I'm trying to think of an analog, but I really can't. So you,
did we stump you?
maybe. So you talked about kind of that, that skill set that you noticed in that person. And we talked about, kind of the being hungry piece, and, participating in these local conferences, and like the people we saw who really wanted to learn, and had a motivation. What is there any other like keys to success there that you saw in some of these, especially these kind of more greener entrants, or like some day-to-day attitudes or things that help them go from, the beginning, whether it be a little experience to no experience, to individual contributor?
Yeah. So that customer service person I was telling you about, our first advice before I would interview him, I said, hey, I'm going to give you a challenge. And the challenge was simple: write a script, PowerShell or Python, I don't care, that grabs the event log from your computer and writes out to a file, to a CSV or what text file, I don't care, everything that's a high finding. Super simple. Almost anyone can do it. There's lots of tutorials on different components, but what it does is it teaches you how to script, how to interact with a data source like an event log or something, how to write out findings, how to do loops and do comparisons. So it may sound extremely simple, but everything in it are elements that you will use in your life, whether it's Splunk searching or looking in an EDR portal, or it teaches you how to think around processing data and making decisions. And I said, if you can do this and you can Google it, and I don't care. I want to see the script and I want to see the output. That's all I care about. I don't care how you found it. And make it work. So like what it does is it's that self-starting, it's the getting your hands on with something that you will be using in for forever in your life. You will use scripting forever. If nothing else, it teaches you how to think about things. So I think on the candidate side, there's some of those initiatives, and like the boss of the sock thing, that portal has a bunch of self-paced challenges as well. I think there's an Okta one, there's a Dragos one. Go out and do that stuff. On the hiring side, I'm getting really tired of people saying there's no one to hire, because you and I do a bunch of these local things. There are so many people that just want someone to take a chance on them. And I wish it's like, just come over here. We will help you. So I think there's a big disconnect between the people hiring and the candidate pool out there. And I think the easiest way for them to meet, go to these local security startups, like these local security things, because then you get a sense of people outside of a structured interview or a yes/no qualification basis. And instead you start seeing them as people and not as candidates. Like, hey, Jack, I met him. I like his personality. I think he would fit with the team. Like, it's so funny that we talk nothing but culture. And yet the very first two hurdles you have to clear for an interview is like technical experience and then how well you interview. And neither of those are real culture gauges.
Yeah. And so so I would summarize what you just said as, and this kind of goes back to like the ability to enter into this space. And there's a wealth of sandboxes and access to all of these technical components and data, and bots is a great example, especially from a defensive side. But you really have a wealth of assets to kind of self-start you and get on that journey, and then a wealth of local community to help connect that. So that's you don't get that in other industries, right? Like you got
there's so much free stuff. There's so much free, and some of it is vendor sponsored. So Boss of the Sock, that's free courtesy of Splunk. We have a bunch of stuff from Microsoft. We have like vendors have their own free learning labs and exposure and trials. And then you have community driven stuff that's on GitHub or private sandboxes, stuff like that. And then you have like tutorials and walkthroughs and YouTube video. Like the amount of information that's out there for this space that's free to access is unbelievable. It is not the way it used to be. This is another unique thing to this space where everyone who got into it and probably has been into it for 5 years or more, for some reason feels like they need to pay it forward. And so they'll speak for free, or they'll give GitHub, or they'll give these training. I mean, that training that we were at with B-Sides, there were other incredible trainers there teaching things for almost free. I think it was $1 for, I think every single trainer decided $1 for the sign up. Where else can you get top level people, exposure to enterprise grade things for $1? Like, it just doesn't happen. So my only other kind of caution is lots of people want to get into hacking or red teaming or offensive security. I'll tell you right now, there is a huge backlog of people in defense that we're missing. So it's great to have that mindset to know how to do those things, but absolutely get those chops up on the defense side, and you'll break into security super quick. That's just but it's cool to be a defender. Okay, don't let the kids on the playground tell you otherwise. It's cool to defend.
Yeah, that's probably a good lead into, because you asked me, all right, what am I grateful for from this company and this industry perspective? And again, kind of being new to the space, coming in very, very fresh or cold or whatever. Not, I didn't know what I didn't know.
You had this weird ancillary view based on whatever I told you.
Exactly.
You were like, "Hey, how's work? Stressful." How can it be stressful?
And I think it has that sort of, when people hear, like when people ask, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, we have a cybersecurity company," and they're like, "Oh, that's way over my head. Like that's way too complicated and techie." And I mean, yeah, the culture is eclectic and techie. But what I appreciated early on was, number one, how extremely challenging this is, and especially from that defensive perspective, right? There is, first of all, I mean, software is eating the world. So every part of every business has technology involved, with, few exceptions. And it's exposed. Like and again, we see the negative stories all the time about the breaches and the ransoms, and and we're facing very sophisticated, well-funded nation states and businesses whose job is to break in and rip off companies, right? To skim that money or make that money or steal it. I mean, it's modern day robbing a bank. It's just every company's a bank, and it's all about disrupting their business, to extort some kind of payment. So, and on the defensive side, it's defenders' jobs on a daily basis, whether you're in the SOC, whether you're on the engineering team, it's your job to prevent this from happening. So like, just waking up every day and being like, all right, I got to go to work. I hope somebody doesn't rob my bank today, like, and
Hope is absolutely in our risk mitigation strategy. Yes, hope is listed in there.
Yeah. So the impact is massive. If you don't do a good job, or if you make a mistake, like
there's an old adage, I think it was from the special operations group, where they talk about our successes no one knows, but our failures everyone knows. Our failures are public. Because guess what the news is not writing about? Great security teams that are handling their business every day. Every day they show up and
right.
they handle their business.
But I wouldn't want to be written up, because then all of a sudden, that looks like a challenge. Let's go get them, right? So I mean, the best notoriety is no notoriety at all. So,
but that makes for an interesting career, because like you imagine that mindset that if I screw this up, everyone will know. But if I'm doing a good job, no one will. Like that in your ethos as a defender, if that takes hold, it's like,
yeah. Ooh. So yeah, and so that's this. There's business critical functions. There's all this technical, this technical complexity with the size and speed of environments, and just the sheer scale of the data that we essentially have to at least have some kind of visibility on. And then the third part is you have this human component, right? So like what we're trying to determine is someone accessing this system or this data with business as usual purpose, or with an intent to cause damage, cost me money, disrupt, essentially the value we're trying to deliver to our customers and shareholders. So there's this huge like human behavioral psychology component on top of all the technical things and on top of all of the sort of business processes, systems, assets, things like that. So it's so fundamental. It touches so many, like, I would say, first principle kind of pieces. And it's a big, huge puzzle, but it's also a noble mission that never ends. So that's a hell of a charge to say, all right, we're gonna go into this space and try to make a difference. And that probably leads into the thing that I'm absolutely most grateful for, and the reason that I'm still here and still fighting the Outpost fight and fighting the fight for our customers is, we're a small company, and yet we've had an opportunity to make huge impacts to some of the biggest companies in the world that have the most, have these problems at the largest scale and the fastest speeds. So that's a pretty powerful, motivating thing to be a part of as a part of my career, but also as, the co-founder of the company. Is, the mission doesn't get much harder or bigger than what we've chosen to bite off, but we're still able to make a difference and push these teams forward, push these organizations forward, kind of define the future of, hey, this is the best way to do this and make this work, so that we can win. We can, and that's I mean, I remember when we were doing our intro kind of session with our our chief marketing officer, who he was the one who pushed us to start this podcast, and we're very grateful for him for
very grateful
leading into this path. But he's like, what's your goal? Like, what are you trying to do as a company? And the simple answer was, we just want to win. We want our customers to win. Like, we want to beat the bad guys every day. And that's I mean, how many careers and how many industries can you say that in, right? So, and
then you begin unpacking what that means, and you're like, no, back in the trunk, get back in there. We'll stick with the beat the bad guys.
So yeah, that's what motivates me. You don't necessarily appreciate that until you start peeling back these layers, and it's something that we've been fortunate to have some good success with, as a small company, in a relatively short period of time. So it's no shortage of opportunities here.
It's an intriguing intersection of ever-changing challenges, open ideas to solving those challenges, varying degrees of openness, but no one's like, oh, just buy Salesforce and your security's done. Like, that doesn't, like, people appreciate how nuanced and big it is. But there's also an impact factor to the employees, to the customers, to these corporations. Like, there's a real human impact to what we do. And then the kind of asymmetric side of, just because we're smaller doesn't mean we're not a viable option for any size organization. There's some places like trying to get onto a grocery store shelf. I mean, I can't imagine the hoops because you got to be sponsored by some incumbent to get onto that shelf. Whereas with us, it's just, do people want to take a chance on you? If they do, great, we can make this happen. And in that fusion of all of those different factors make it an interesting ride, but very fulfilling.
Definitely.
I like that one.
Yeah. Yeah, you had a preview of I had a preview of your gratitude points, but
the show notes.
I held mine until the last minute. All right, so we got one more kind of point to bring up that we have in our prep, and it's very personal and very real for you. So are you still want to go there?
Yeah, why not? So so this gratitude, so I've talked a lot about kind of like the industry and the people coming in and the people who are in it and just a lot of that stuff. This final one I wanted to make just my personal gratitude, which is, so a few years back I had a spinal stroke. So I didn't know what it was. So a little refresher for anyone who didn't go to medical school. It's a blood clot in your spinal cord. And where mine happened, it left me paralyzed from the shoulders down. So couldn't move anything. Wide awake. That was great.
Well, like, wide awake. And I mean, you were sitting at your desk
talking
at work.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to throw work under the bus like that, but yeah, it was the middle of a work day and just, I feel weird. But anyway, so left me paralyzed. I knew as soon, so it took them about a week to figure out it was a spinal stroke because they had no idea. I'm pretty sure that the doctors and the nurses said it had been about 25 or 27 years since they'd seen someone with one. Usually a stroke is a brain clot, is a blood clot in the brain. That's what they're used to seeing, not one in the spinal cord. Because that means, if I remember right, that means it passed through other areas to get into my spinal cord where it usually gets caught. So that's another reason why it's kind of rare. But anyway, it took me about a week to figure it out. Started my not so quick journey to recovery. And now it kind of left me. So when I first got out of rehab, I could walk about 100 feet, 200 feet before I'd have to sit, stuff like this. But I could walk. So, hey, awesome. I'll take it. I will take it. But what it really did is it damaged my hands. So my hands are essentially paralyzed. So where does this come back to the industry? Laying in that bed trying to recover, these natural thoughts of, well, how am I going to contribute? How am I going to earn money? How am I, like, all of a sudden you're running through all these stressors about what am I going to do to eat? And my manager and my team kept reassuring me, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. And that feels gracious at the time, because what they're trying to do is get you to focus on what's important right now. We'll cross that bridge later. But they actually backed it up. And when I got out and I started going back to work, they really did help me, including my poor coworker, Kim, had to deal with me leaning over her shoulder, asking her to type things. And this is the way things progressed for like a month until she said, hey, maybe you should learn how to type. But here's where the gratitude comes in, is that this has never been, so even though I have a disability, it has not been a hindrance to me feeling like I'm contributing to customers, to the space. We still do trainings and we still speak and we do the podcast, and I still write detections for people. And so it's amazing that I could get folded right back in as if nothing happened and just keep going with my career, even though so many other things in my life were upended. And so I'm just like super grateful, not only to the fact that there's this type of industry where even with disabilities, you can still be an active contributor. And that's my other thing is just, if you have a disability of some sort, like, get creative. There's all, like, I had to find things like a trackball and stuff like that, but it works. And then the other thing is just the appreciation for the people that were around me at the time for just supporting. Hey, you can do this. Just keep learning, keep trying. We'll do this. We'll figure it out. So yeah, it's a little personal, but I think some people say community, or like, hey, there's not a lot of judgment. Like, here, I've been right there. I mean, when people go to shake my hand, I always see the surprise in their face when my hand doesn't shake their hand the way they expect. And there's always that trigger moment where it's like, do I ask or don't ask? No, I have no problem with it, but I really have never felt pushed out, or, it's always been just like, it's no different than if my hair was gray. To everyone else, it's like, oh, great, you have brown hair instead of gray. Whatever.
That might be an understatement, because you still technically type for a living.
Yeah, I still type. I had to figure out how to type. Now, I do occasionally have to file a sick day with my boss. Hey, my hands hurt. Did a lot of typing, so my hands hurt. Which took a little while to be like, why do your hands hurt? It's like, oh, I hunt and peck. Beep boop boop beep. But yeah, you just kind of roll with it. But that never diminished my ability to help people, or my desire to, which is amazing. Like that. So just hands down, the fact that there's a job and a career where, we can be a part of this stuff no matter what, is really amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think a couple of pieces there. Number one, this is 100% a team sport. I mean, there is no single defender that's going to be successful, because it's 24/7 and it's complex and always evolving. So it's 100% a team sport. Everyone on a team has different strengths, different complements. And that was highlighted in your experience, but it is a tactical but strategic and cerebral job as well, right? Like it's not just it's not just a firefight back. You have to play some chess and outthink what's going on. And that's something that, you can anybody can contribute regardless of sort of physical capability, right? It's about experience. And
maybe that was the way you're saying this. That was one of the hidden gifts. Was before my stroke, I definitely thought highly of myself. Let's just say that I was okay being the Rambo and I'll go in and I'll help, but I didn't have a choice after my stroke. Everything I did had to be team oriented. Everything. I no longer had a vote in doing it alone. I needed team members, whether it's with a customer, whether it's our direct team, whether it's you. I needed help. And so I think what it did is it locked some doors that were limiting me and helped open some where it's like, yeah, we don't just say it's a team sport, we live it. This is it. And I think that's a great gift, especially for the work we do now.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think that's kind of a good roll in to the kind of a closing wrap to say, this is an extremely hard job. It's an extremely hard mission. It's we talk about all of the problems to solve pretty much on every single, episode that we have in this podcast, as well as every time we talk to a customer or work with a customer. And it's all right, what's the next challenge? How do we best it? How do we put ourselves in position for it? And it's still a young and new industry. So we still see there's still a lot of problems that are, for lack of a better term, self-inflicted, either some tech debt, some strategic debt, some leadership debt, things like that. So it's not it doesn't get any easier, it seems, no matter kind of how hard we try. So the hard gratitude lesson there, I think, is the challenge is what makes us grow. It helps us get better, makes us get better, so that, you know, when we do win, it's durable and it's lasting. So
you're going to be challenged. So the thing is, what is your perspective on being challenged? Is it a hardship, or is it or does it feel like you're a victim of the challenge, or that the challenge is a hardship helping you grow? And because they're not going to stop. As soon as you deal with one challenge, there's going to be another one. And I really think that you have to kind of take that time back to say, listen, what am I grateful for? What am I like? Just take 5-10 minutes and say, hey, you know what? I heard them. Yeah, some of that makes sense, but it's this person or this job, or like, what's something that fills your cup back up and puts you back into this fight with kind of that renewed sense of purpose?
Yeah, exactly. And that, I think, is a perfect kind of closing benediction. And the reason that we wanted to have this be the topic of today. So once again, thanks for tuning in. We hope, I mean, I know this filled up my cup a little bit and refocused as to, you know, why are we doing this and why are we fighting these battles, especially as, you know, I told someone yesterday, I'm like, yeah, we're just a couple of Davids out there fighting
an army of Goliaths.
An army of Goliaths. So
an army, not a Goliath, an army of Goliaths. Yes.
Yeah. So as always, we appreciate you listening. You can check us out on LinkedIn or check us out at our website, outpost-security.com. And of course, check out the RBA community at rba.community. So thanks for listening, and we will
Thanks, everyone.
We will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Outpost RBA podcast. Stuart McIntosh has over 20 years of experience building and maturing security programs inside Fortune 500 companies. In 2018, he gave a talk at Splunks.conf titled "Say Goodbye to Your Big Alert Pipeline and Say Hello to Your New Risk-Based Approach," which started the rise of RBA. As the creator and architect of risk-based alerting, he pioneers security methodologies at Outpost Security, which he co-founded with Will. Will Robus has spent the last 20 years in the operations or financial C-suites at technology and security companies, focused on what drives results and successful scaling. At Outpost Security, he works with CISOs to imagine a more expansive future for their SOC, once it has a solid RBA foundation. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Share it with your security team and CISO. Connect with us on LinkedIn. And contact us at outpost-security.com to lift your team out of the fog of alert confusion with RBA 0 to 1.